All right, guys, welcome to another video. So today we got some face-to-face with the developers, right? These are some big changes. I'm gonna only cover the armament one, just because if I try to cover all of them, it could be a very long video, but also this is one I just felt like covering. So let's go over this. This is in-game mail, so I assume most people have read it, but so I'll cover it really quick. Right, so what are your future plans for armaments? Answer, we plan on adding a new armament conversion feature in January. This feature allows you to spend materials, so I assume like iron, ebony, right, the stuff that we're using to craft equipment right now, to convert existing armaments into new ones, making it easier and more cost-effective to develop new formations without starting from scratch. So I've been saying this for a few months now. The armament system currently as it is broken. Even with this change, I still think it's broken, and I'll cover why. Because if you have all these different formations, right, the system currently doesn't actually incentivize you to spread out and say pull circle for a garrison or pull arch for a smite, because once you get your armaments to a decent enough spot, and as I'm mentoring more and more accounts, there's more and more people whose armaments are in a decent spot. As your armament gets to a certain level, the real upgrades is going to be either really good double inscriptions, which is very, very uncommon, or special inscriptions, which other than the spot for the scroll, right, where you get like hunter and like destructive, it's even more uncommon, right? So what the current system incentivizes you to do is to pull the same armament type over and over and over to either get the special inscription there through the pity system. Hopefully you get lucky, right? But you're really trying to take advantage of the pity system. So if they bring out all these new armament types, right, people aren't going to be incentivized to invest in that, because if I'm trying to pull for circle, right, well, it's really only going to be usable for maybe Shajar or garrison or something where you have healing. But I'm not going to pull that because most of my field marches aren't going to be utilizing that, right? So some of the more recent ones, they try to put out delta, circle. No one's pulling that, right? Unless you're just crazy, because it just doesn't make sense. So this thing that they're releasing with this mechanism in January, this armament conversion, now you could take, say, you've just been pulling all wedge, right, and then you have a triple siege stat wedge, right? You can actually pay some material cost and convert it over to V formation, and now it could actually be usable for range, right? It's actually a good change. And I'll just read the end part. The higher the rarity and number of inscriptions, the more items you'll need for the conversion. The required items, so I think it's going to be kind of like the transmutation crystals, right? The required items can be acquired through KVK events and endgame bundles, right? So another way to one, kind of gatekeep and limit how often you can do it, but then also probably make some money off of it. So this change is good, but it's also very, very frustrating because it actually doesn't fix the fundamental problem that caused this, right? So if you've watched any of my videos for any amount of time, you probably understand I'm big onto cause and effect, the reason why, figuring out efficiency. Right, so if somebody eats like crap, right, whether it's from lack of knowledge, and it's usually not lack of knowledge, it's usually some other block. A lot of times it's some kind of mental block where people can't put good food in their body, right? Focusing on what supplements they're taking is kind of missing the point, or it's secondary. Because if you're actually having a well-balanced, healthy diet, the need for a lot of these supplements either goes down or goes away. Right, but if you don't address fundamentally what's wrong, and then you implement all these fixes, it's not the right sequence, and it's not the most effective, right? Or another example is, if you keep spraining your ankles, or you keep hurting your back, doing daily movements, or even just some working out, right? There's something going on with your movement quality or movement pattern, and then probably more specifically, the balance of certain muscles or your lack of awareness in your movement, right? If I'm focusing on releasing fixes, aka Nike, where, oh, I'm going to release these shoes for ankle support, right, where I'm going to release these shorts for more back support, it never actually fundamentally addressed the problem. So this to me is one of those fixes where it's addressing a problem that was caused by a flaw in the system. If you actually fix fundamentally what was wrong with the system in the first place, this would actually be a really good change, but it wouldn't be as necessary, and it can actually be kind of have a place where it should, which is something that makes the system better, not kind of like a bandage. Okay, so the fundamental problem with armaments right now is that when you pull armaments, right? When you pull armament, you have to declare what armament type you're selecting, right? So you're either going to pull for arch, wedge, or IV formation, right? Or if you're traveling, right, you kind of already have to declare, if I can actually pull this up here, you already have to declare what you want, right? So once you do this, right, you already have a specific armament type, whether it's a choice chest, right? You have to actually pick a wedge, and then you can pick a wedge and then get triple siege stats. And then now they're making you select some kind of, well, you have to spend some material, and then you probably need some kind of item to even be able to convert it over, right? Like my second ever video, and I'm gonna actually pull it up off the screen here. My second ever video has 163 views, by far the least amount of views I ever got on a video. Was called the one change that can fix the armament system in Rise of Kingdoms. Okay, this was before you could reroll. This was before any of the stuff comes out. This is literally just talking about the armament system as it was released originally. And what I proposed in there, and it still holds true now, is that when it comes to armaments, right, why not make it where, okay, I'm gonna open a choice chest. I don't think I actually have any. Right, but let's just say I'm going to open a choice chest, right? You don't have to select the armament type, okay? It's just an armament, and something's going to come out of the box, and I don't have a lot of waste here. All right, something comes out of the box, and let's just say it comes out something like this, okay? Cav, damage reduction to barbs. From here, I can actually select which armament type I want, right? Because once I see the stats, and then you can see if it has an inscription or not. You don't even have to know what inscription it is. You just know whether it has an inscription or not, right? Like you can easily do that. Now I could select, say, wedge, because right now for calves, right, I'm just going to use wedge, right? Whereas if it was infantry, damage reduction to barbs, I'm going to select arch, right? Or skill. Like, who knows if skill damage becomes a thing with infantry again, right? If I see, for example, like gold gathering, march speed, or something like that, maybe I'm going to select line formation so it could help my gathering march, right? That makes sense. It makes it way less painful. So if you get the triple stat of something that isn't applicable to, say, like the formation you want, okay, you don't feel like it's gone away. So you can actually have a place where you could put it, okay? It also takes away the need for this whitelist where, okay, for V formation, you can see right now, right? If I've gotten 2, that means I've gotten 2 rare inscriptions, and I don't know why. Oh, I know I have 2 rare, because we'll draw. I don't actually. That's actually kind of weird. It says I gotten 2 here, but I only see 1, so that means I probably actually deleted another one. Regardless, that's kind of embarrassing, right? But now, if I actually pull something, I know it could be relevant, and then it takes away the need for this whitelist on the back end, right? Because if I'm actually looking for a special inscription down here, you know, and I'm a siege user, but it makes no sense for me to pull potentially 150 times 10, which is 1,500 V formation inscriptions to finally get a pity special inscription, right? I can actually just have this be one universal bucket. So whether it's V formation, whether it's arch formation, they're all just like, you know, once you get to 10 rares, you can select a special, right? And then from there, you can pick which formation you want. So now you could actually combine all that on the back end. And then people feel a lot better about this armament. And you could easily actually set it up where you could still make a bunch of money out of it, Lilith, but people that are participating actually feel like they're winning. And it's not this like very painful and frustrating thing that more people are complaining about than not, right? Because if you look at the current change, right? Okay, now if I have, say, a arch, and oh, this is pretty good. I really like forceful, right? And I don't really have a need for it. I'm going to spend some materials and some like item to convert it over. Well, what does that do with this, right? I still need to actually pull for, say, arch or for wedge, because my whitelist here says 4, but my V formation says 2, right? And I need to get to 10 if I'm unlucky, which, you know, for me personally, I have been, to actually get a special inscription. So it doesn't actually still address this problem that you have to pick a formation type before you actually see the stats, which one, doesn't make people feel like they're winning, but 2, makes the system very, very clunky, right? Now you can imagine if, okay, it's a blank armament, right? You see the stats, you can select the armament type, and all that stuff is in place. And then you introduce this this mail where, okay, right? And now let's just say you're because when you're doing a travel, right, sometimes you just have to, actually no, because it takes away the need to even select the wrong thing, right? Like if you had that system in place, like I talked about, there's going to be way less like scenarios, and I can't really think of one off the top of my head, where you even need this thing in the first place, right? Like the only reason why you need this is because they force you to pick an armament type beforehand, and you could get a stat you don't want, right? So it makes very little sense, and a lot of the stuff that the developers do make a lot of sense, which is why you could probably hear the frustration in my voice. It's very frustrating, you know, like if some pleb like me a year ago at this point, way before the armament system was built out, could actually come to this conclusion. I don't know why they keep bringing out these band-aid fixes, but not just change fundamentally what's wrong with it from the beginning, right? The only thing I could think of is that, and this totally makes sense, right? Because essentially this game is kind of like a city building war game with a lot of like MMORPG elements, right? Like or RPG elements where you're literally building your character, you're building your account, you're building your troop, and then you know, your account could be better than someone else's, but it's such a large scale. Like even if you have a really good account, right, you can only do so much by yourself, and you have to work with other people. Which is why you know, like for all this complaining, I still think this is the most fun game I've ever played, and I love playing this game, right? But if you change the armament system fundamentally, where okay, there's a blank armament that you get, right, and then you get to select which armament type, and then if you get 10 rares, doesn't matter what armament type, you can select special inscription, right? You can whitelist a special inscription and then select the formation type you want. Now you can release a lot more formation types, and it actually wouldn't feel so bad for most people to go into there, because if you release a new cooler formation type that well, they just did one for combo attack, right? But let's just say you do the combo attack. Now if I have one where it's triple M stat, right, and I already have a decent arch set, I might just select the triple M for combo, and then like want to test that out maybe for Lucia with a combo attack, right? We could easily do that. I don't know why they haven't done it, and I kind of got distracted. The only thing I could think of is because they want to gatekeep, right? Because if this is a RPG or MMORPG, right, where you have to build your account, if you do that, yes, it streamlines the process, but it also makes it easier to kind of hit the top end of what they're looking for right now, right? So a good example of that was equipment. Before the Awaken system, more and more people had crit on their equipment, right? When you have 7 sets and they're all crit, and there's nothing, nowhere to really go with your equipment anymore, because you know you just had your legendary, you put iconic crystal, and then you crit it, and you can't get any better. All of a sudden, one, right, we're not going to spend as much money on it, but also you could lose interest because if everything's max level and there's nothing else to really build on, that kind of takes away that RPG component of this game. That also makes it really fun to like collect and build and keep progressing your account, right? So the only thing I could think of why they didn't do that was maybe because they didn't want to progress too fast. But why don't you do what I proposed and then start adding like different levels, right? So for example, one thing they could do is, okay, from the base, at the base level, right, when you pull an armament, okay, there's still going to be a range, okay? So when you pull a stat, you could get from 1.5 to 3.5 the stat. Okay, that's still the same, right? But now you can actually start spending materials or spending whatever, some kind of currency or something, to progress it past 3.5, right? So once you get to 3.5, right, you can still have that random element, roll it, and once it's at 3.5, maybe the cap is actually 4, right? And then you can make it where, you know, like 1% in each slot is like okay, like it's significant enough where like people will go for it, but it's not so significant that the people that can't afford it can't do it. Now, like, you could also add more levels to it where you're essentially extending out the time it takes for people to build to the end, like the highest level you could get to, and make it interesting again, right? But like fundamentally streamline the armament process so you don't have to release all these little fixes to fix a broken system in the first place, right? People will feel better about the system, and then you can still actually make it where you can make money from it, and then like everyone feels like they're winning for the most part, besides the people that just like to complain about everything, right? But like this is kind of like a halfway solution going towards that. But like if you're going to allow people to convert anyways, why did you force them to actually pick a armament type in the first place? You could easily just not do that. Okay, so that's my rant on that subject. So right now there's two parts that kind of changes what I've been recommending to people, right? So for about the last 4 or 5 months or so, I've been recommending people pull arch, because with the arch formation, it's going to be universal and applies to every march that comes out, right? Whereas wedge, there were more and more commanders or marches where, like, if you have Luchette, right, you're not going to benefit from wedge. If you have, for example, there was a rumor a while back that the next Cav commander is going to be a combo attack commander, right? Or like Serjar did true damage, right? You don't benefit from wedge and the skill damage increase, right? Whereas like arch was universal. Well, with the release of this information, that advice kind of goes out the window. Now you should be pulling wedge because that's still applicable to most of the marches. And then if you do get a armament that, let's just say, is triple inf, right, you have the opportunity to convert it from wedge to arch or wedge to delta, and that actually makes a lot more sense now, right? So with this, you don't really have to save, in my opinion. Just start pulling for wedge. They still do have the opportunity to fix this right now, which is, and I think like I think it's inevitable, right? Like I'm surprised more people haven't caught on this whitelist thing for different armament types. I think they're going to have to combine this on the back end, and just basically, if you have 4 here, 2 somewhere else, and then 3 somewhere else, congrats, you get a special inscription, and then you can select which armament type you want. I think we're going to be going towards that anyways. But like in the meantime, I would actually just pull wedge. The exception is if you have something like this right now, right? Because unless they've officially announced it, right? If you have, let's just say, not 4, let's just say it's 6, right? But even if it's 4 out of 10, and you just start pulling wedge now, well, this is just going to sit here and go to waste, right? So right now, the way this system is set up, I'm still kind of incentivized to pull arch, because if you look over here, my whitelist here is 0 because I actually just got a intrepid, so it reset, right? But if I keep pulling here, it could potentially get to 10 before I could get a special. Whereas like right now, I'm probably still incentivized to use this up, get this to 10 or get a special, and then I'm going to start pulling for wedge. All right, but that's what this armament update changes. I think you go back to pulling wedge because that's going to still be the most universal that applies to the most field marches, and then from there you want to switch over, right? But like I'm begrudgingly doing that because I think the system didn't have to be that way to begin with. Like it's very, very frustrating that they're announcing all these changes, but they refuse to make the one change that will actually really streamline this armament system. So you don't really have to save your armaments. I don't think it really changes much, right? They already told you what they're gonna do. And then even if, let's just say they watch my video, right, or listen to my suggestion and decide to combine the stuff on the back end, this whitelist stuff, well, they're just combine it and you're gonna be able to get a special anyways, right? So like there's not a lot of downside for just pulling wedge right now, unless you're pretty far along on a whitelist for like, say like arch or something. Like I'm not gonna pull V formation, obviously, right? Hopefully they combine it so this just doesn't go to waste. But when it comes to arch or wedge, right, unless you're someone in like my shoes where you're like at least far enough along with this whitelist, where you just kind of want to hopefully just get lucky and pull the special, just start pulling wedge only, and then convert it over to something else from there, which is going to be coming in January. All right, so if you watched all the way to the end, you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.